And we're live.
Yes, we are.
Welcome to episode 8 of How to Thrive as a Human in an AI World. I'm Stephanie Barnes, and this is
Simo Rotarin, and we have two wonderful guests.
Kingsley Akins and Lucas Wunsch are joining us today. And so I'll let them both introduce themselves. I'll say a couple of words about themselves before we get started on the conversation. Kingsley, do you want to go first?
Okay, thank you. My name is Kingsley Akins, bit of a mouthful. I live in Dublin, Ireland, but I spent most of my life working in other countries around the world. So I was in Australia for 8 years, and I was in the US for 15 years. I was in France for a while. And I worked for promoting inward investment into Ireland, promoting export promotion. And then I ran a philanthropic organization called the Ireland Funds. The first event we had was so unsuccessful. The only reason we had a second event a year later was to pay for the first event, and that's $750 million ago. So I'm fascinated by that. But when I look at what was the driver in all those different parts of my career, it was building relationships, it was people, it was networks. So I'm fascinated by the evolution of networking, both online and offline. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Great, thanks. And Lucas, you were with us last year, so
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, good to be back here. I'm Lucas, based in Munich, Germany. I'm working for an IT consultancy as head of knowledge. Spent quite a big proportion of my career working in consultancies and in knowledge positions. I just recently joined the German KM Association, GFWM, as member of the board and vice president. So, yeah, really excited to be back, and I think the topic is yet as relevant as it was last year. So, let's see what we find in terms of talking points for today.
yeah, great. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you here. And it was so nice. I'm going to say it was so nice to see and meet both of you. Well, in Lucas's case, again, in Dublin a few weeks ago. So I love being remote and working remotely, but it's also really nice to meet in person. And someday Simo and I may meet in person.
Yeah, working on that. Okay, I see.
We've been doing these things. Simo and I have been working together for what? It's going to be almost 3 years now, because it was when I was in Berlin.
I think it's over 3 years. This is the fourth year.
Fourth
Yeah.
year, yeah. We've never met. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Mm.
So it's possible to thrive in an AI world, in a remote
It's possible
world.
to have a relationship, a working,
Working
really good,
relationship.
intimate, fun relationship
Yeah.
online.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Simo, before we got started, you were mentioning you'd heard about China banning AI from personal relationships.
Yeah, it seems like China has banned Dubao and Gwen bots, which are kind of personal, intimate bots, bonding with humans or human bonding with them, but not other AI, not the productivity part, but only the personal relationship part. It's banned now, starting like July 15th.
Oh, wow. Oh, so that's just recent then.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
Which is interesting. I think one of the questions is that if it has to be banned as a health hazard, to prevent addictive behavior, like what does those AI personal relationship bots have that human relations do not have or possess?
well, the AI is always there, right?
Yeah.
It never says, I have a headache.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe it has a bit more context than we have personally speaking, right? So just being able to access any information that's outside of the concrete situation. I keep hitting the wall of what I can remember and what I can take with me in terms of information and backlog and history, right? So maybe that's something where an AI can actually jump in and hey, 3.5 years ago you had, I don't know, pumpkin soup on September the 14th in the evening, right? So that's what I don't remember, but maybe that's one of the things it actually can help with.
The other thing I would just mention before we came on air is that the world is kind of racing to put AI into classrooms, but actually Norway just announced this week that they're banning AI for kids aged between 6 and 13. They'll get no access to AI in the schools. Those aged 14 to 16 can use it, but only with supervision of a teacher. And the older kids are allowed to get into it just because it prepares them for kind of university sort of life. And Norway's, it's an interesting country in many sorts of ways. They actually banned smartphones from schools in 2024 after research in 400 middle schools showed that actually there was less bullying and better grades where phones were restricted in classes. So, it's just interesting and indicative of how different countries are dealing with this issue.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if it was Norway. It might have been. It was definitely a Nordic country, though, that was going away from iPods or iPads and screens in the classroom to actual physical textbooks.
Yeah.
I know. And teaching handwriting again, because of the benefits of that on your brain, right? So,
I mean, I look at this in a kind of a bigger societal context in that, and I go into schools and colleges and I teach kids how to be better at networking. And, networking is all about relationships and all about building those connections, etc. And pretty much every company I go into to do this work say the same thing about the next generation. And I got to be careful, I'm not dishing on the next generation, but they say that the next generation are fantastic, deductive, analytical, and completely crap at soft skills. So they will text, not talk, and they will not pick up a phone. So that's the next challenge. We just spend a gigantic amount of time. So what they're saying to me is that there's 5 kind of contemporaneous challenges that companies are facing. There's less business development, there's less learning on the job, particularly for the next generation coming through. There's less serendipity, luck, and chance encounters. There's less company loyalty, and there's less company culture. Now, they're all pretty big issues. And I think the other overarching issue out there is perhaps the biggest crisis in the world today is loneliness and isolation. Yeah. And the Harvard longitudinal study on aging, which has been going on for like 80 years, is the great one, says that loneliness and isolation are more damaging and limiting to your longevity than 3 things: alcohol, obesity, and drugs. Wow, that kind of puts it right up there. So I do think we got to be careful we're not starching the humanity out of our lives by living on screens. And I'll finish by saying, if you ask people, and all of us on this call, if you look back in your life, what were the most memorable experiences? Were they spent in front of a screen, or were they spent with other people? And most people, I think, would go for the latter answer.
Yeah, it's definitely people for me. But yeah, and I wanted to ask you though, Kingsley, because of the work you do around networking, and that's something that I see has been, I think it was in the business context, seemed always a bit transactionalized, at least as long as I've been self-employed, in that I would go to these networking events and have salespeople come up to me and hand me their card and ask for mine, and then wander away and not talk to me at all, understand what I do. And I think that's gotten worse as time has moved on, because the data, it's all about the data, right? And Simo, are you waving your hand?
I think I'm inclined to say that, loneliness. I do agree that the loneliness is a big growing problem throughout the world. And I would say that the main issue is not like, are we online or offline, but the quality of interaction we are having online or offline. Because it seems like the individualism, like the egocentrism and competition have been rising up, and they are the rising trends that leave us like being the winners or losers all by ourselves. We have to kind of like make our own future and fortune and, be self-made, but we are not, relying on each other's. We are not relying on the community.
I think one thought that just crossed my mind is that maybe we need to distinguish a little bit between the work context and the very personal context, right? We talk about work-life balance, but in the end, what I do see with all the AI features being more and more integrated in our workspace is actually that it, to a certain degree, can be helpful, right? To have that whole topic of being available, the topic of organizing, structuring, context, pattern recognition, whatever, right? I think that can be a huge advantage actually in the work life, at least in white-collar jobs, right? To have that sort of collaborator, right? You might want to call it agents. Some years ago, we talked about AI in general, right? Not sure what the next thing will be, but in the end, what we talk about from a business perspective is really that sort of companion that works with you, right? That accompanies you in your workday, that helps you organize your stuff, right? Up to MS Cowork, right? Like organizing your calendar in the Microsoft environment, right? I think that is to a certain degree helpful, and very much helpful as well. I think where it gets interesting is really when you move from the work environment or the co-work environment to your private lives and to your lives outside of maybe a white collar job, right? Where one really needs to kind of, I think what we need is to even more than before, we need to switch on our work life, and we need to switch it off once we finish our jobs, right? And I think that's what's getting more and more challenging with AI being on your mobile phones or wherever, right? Just a note here. I think it's not that black and white in the sense of it doesn't need to be that black and white in the sense of AI is ruling everything, right? I think it's really important to really look at the specific use case here. But Kingsley, you wanted to add something?
No, I'm just going to back up what Simo said. I think there's this kind of myth of individualism out there, and it's kind of a Hollywood notion that life is about the Lone Ranger, the Marlboro Man, the Wonder Woman, the rugged individual taking on the world and winning. It's all bullshit. Life's about connecting, collaborating, communicating. Opportunities don't float around on clouds. They're attached to people. If you're looking for an opportunity, you're looking for a person. So it's all about keeping that personality and character in there. And I'm not in any way against AI, but I think we have to think in terms of AI and rather than AR or, Yeah. And that balance is the struggle,
It's not your genes, it's your connection.
Yeah. I mean, and Stephanie, I mean, I agree with you. Networking, it has a lousy image. I mean, it conjures up images of insincere, inauthentic people late at night in the bar, flicking out business cards. You wake up in the morning, you find Stephanie's business card and they turn up your trousers. Where did that come from? What happened last night? Like it's just, the image is awful, but actually it's so necessary. I mean, because here's the two most important words in all our lives, and these two words are other people. You'll never get a job unless other people agree to it. You'll never get a promotion unless other people agree to it. You'll never get married unless other people agree to it. So what you're really saying is that other people hold the keys to our career progress. Decisions made by other people are going to have a huge impact on our lives. Yeah. But this technology is this tendency to make us intensely individual and alone. There's a woman called Sherry Turkle. Do you ever read her books? Alone Together is her book. And she says that, we have given up our identities to spending our time alone in front of a screen. And the statistics for the amount of time we spend in front of screens, and I'm guilty, are pretty incredible. The amount of hours in a week. Yeah.
Are we now alone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are?
Well,
no, four of us.
We're not hermits, but we're all part of communities and entities and families, etc. I'm not against people who live more solitary lives, but I do think there's a balance there somewhere we got to get right.
Yeah. I think it's about balance. We go too much one way or the other, and the truth is that it needs to be a balance, a middle ground. So that we don't seem to have a lot of luck in finding.
Yeah, but I do feel like the balance is important, right? In both ways. I mean, there's got to be some push towards AI. I mean, we gotta, let's be fair, right? One way or the other, we need to indulge into the AI world, right? We need to at least be in there to figure out what works for us and what not, right? But also we need to work in our professional lives. We need to work in our private lives. And we need to decouple, let's say, from everything technological that's around us, right? But in the end, what I do see is just get a tell before we went online, right? I'm just about to write an article for a book on personal KM, right? Where I talk about the what I call external calibration, right? So whatever we do in our very own context, whatever data we work on, whatever knowledge we work on, is at some point sooner or later needs to go through what I call external calibration, right? Which might be a community of practice, which might be peers, which might be an AI, which might be something else, right? In order not for us in order to externalize everything and to share everything with everybody, but in order for us to get really back to what I call orientation, right? In order to be oriented in a world where we have even more answers than we had before, right? I mean, AI is so good at giving you answers, maybe even on questions that you didn't ask or on questions that you didn't know yourself, right? I mean, haven't we all been there, right? So I think in that sense, it's really important, as you say, to find a balance between being very much in your business and very much and being very much outside of your own business, right? And apparently there's some personality traits that play into that, right? If you're an introvert or extrovert, obviously the extroverts will play more on the socializing part than the introvert, right? But what I would claim is really that the German saying of cooking in one's own soup, right, is really there's some reason behind it, right? I mean, as if you don't build those external connections, if you don't interact with others or technology, and that might be a new part, right? You are still in your own things, right? The thing about AI is that in most of the cases, right, you would need to tell it to think outside the box, otherwise it will most probably will stay within the box of what you gave it as context, right? So I think the whole topic, Simon, we discussed it before, right? What's the human part, right? Thinking outside the box might be something that's more human than other things if you think about AI.
Yeah, and also emotions, embodied experiences, and what Lucas, you said earlier about like we should be mindful of like how much energy or focus we put on work and how much do we put it on personal side, like things outside work. I'm interested in, could we combine these, like, because in Finland there has been like old companies, family-owned companies that are actually providing community to people who work in it. And there are some companies that actually are building a culture that's sustainable, and they feel like a family together, and they share stuff. And I'm in my dreams. I also say I would love to see more of that in work life, not only private life. And there's a wonderful comment from Melina, one of our participants. It's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. There are more communal or community-based cultures that Western cultures are really individual, strongly individual.
Yeah. I think there's some variation to it as well, right? I mean, I would say the cultural aspect of, are you more of a relational culture, if you want to call it like that, right? More of a relationship-driven culture or not, is one thing. The other thing is what we put on top of it, right? So, I mean, if we are in a very individualistic culture and we put AI and all the abilities that it brings, right, it's a totally natural thing to further strengthen that individualism, right, and the autonomy of the individual, right? And one gotta ask oneself the question if that's good enough, if that's where we're heading or not, right? And I mean, there's always ways to intervene, right? Always ways to kind of add additional flavor, add additional connections, and so on, even in a very individualistic culture, right? And Kingsley, since you mentioned Norway, right? I accidentally used to live there for 5 years, so I know quite a bit about the Norwegian culture, right? And what I always keep telling people when they ask me how are the Norwegians, right? And maybe the Finnish people are even more extreme on that. What I keep telling them is that they are pretty much introverts, right? It takes a long time for them to acknowledge you as someone that's close to their heart, right? And once you get into that inner circle, you can't get out of there anymore, right? So I think that's maybe what distinguishes the Norwegian or some of the Scandinavian cultures from many others, right? But so I think there's something about culture and what you make out of it and how culturally aware you actually are. and then the notion of what AI does to that, right? So it's about amplification of what's already there, right? And you can easily transfer that, I think, to an organizational context. And I did look into that a bit in the sense of AI adoption and so on, right? Claiming that AI adoption is more about visualizing how an organization works than actually helping it move forward in the first place, right? So we gotta figure out where we are, and AI might be even either a door opener or quite a big surprise, right? And then once you cut to that moment of truth, you can actually work with it, right? Instead of AI to do the magic by just plugging it in. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we all agree it's not going away. I mean, it's here, and we got to figure out how to live with it. I mean, if I had said to you, maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I'm in my Uber on my iPhone booking an Airbnb in Norway. I mean, the only word you would have understood would have been the word Norway. Those things didn't exist. So I think that the evolution is so incredibly fast that it's here and it's here to stay. We got to figure out. But we just got to make sure that we keep that kind of humanity going. I mean, Martin Luther King, the great Martin Luther King, you know, he said famously, "I have a dream." He didn't say, "I have a strategic plan." You know, when you think about it, I mean, I have a dream. It just catches you. It's wonderful, you know, and it says so much about humanity. A strategic plan. You sound like Accenture. You know?
Yeah, I'm. It's so lovely that you mentioned that. The ability to dream.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's human.
Yeah. Well, and coming back to something that was said a few minutes ago, the stepping outside of the box, you know, the thinking, making different connections or asking different questions that may on the face of it appear unrelated and yet may help solve a problem.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, curiosity is an important thing, you know, asking questions is an important thing. Because I think that, you know, we all understand the importance of physical health, and that's well entrenched in our societies. And increasingly, I think over the last maybe 10 years, mental health is a big issue. But I actually think the coming issue is social health, which I
love you, Kingsley. That's so cool to say.
Yeah.
Oh, social health.
Social health, yeah.
I love that. And my dream is that we would harness AI to help us with that.
Yeah.
You know, with solutions like how do we actually get rid of the egocentrism and competition, and how do we, you know, get closer to each other as human beings? Let's ask AI to help us with that.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, Sima, I love to see what other people are doing, and then, as I say, borrow. I'm a founder member of an organization called CASE, which stands for Copy and Steal Everything. So figure out who does this.
Central principles is to not bother to invent stuff if you can steal it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we have also with Stephanie, like many times we have come back again and again to the same thought that maybe we should first think of how to thrive as a human before we talk about how to use an AI to help with it.
Yeah. Do we really need to ask AI how to have better social health, better social, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm afraid we do have.
Because I'm save you a lot of money. Leave the apartment and talk to people.
Yeah, talk to strangers.
Talk to strangers. Join, do some volunteer work. Go get a coffee and talk to somebody at the coffee shop. You know.
But the AI could help us to train if it's a threshold. If you are socially afraid to do that, because some people are. And you could train with AI to what to say, how to approach people, and blah blah blah. It could help you with that. If it's too big threshold to go out and actually speak to a person.
I mean, I think, you know, we tend to split into either extroverts or introverts, but I actually think a lot of us, I certainly think I am I'm an ambivert. In other words, I really enjoy social events. I love being out and about, but I need time on my own, and I need time to recharge, and I need to be away from everybody. But that's not to say I'm antisocial in any way. So I think, getting that balance right, but realizing that there's sort of three categories there.
Yeah.
And then I think, we all have to build our personal relationships. We got to build, our operational relationships with people with whom we work, and have a cordial and courteous, respectful relationship with these people. We need to have the strategic network of people who are going to help us get to where we want to get to. And now we all have to have an online network, because if I was to Google your name, Stephanie, the first thing that comes up is your LinkedIn profile. So I do a bit of work with LinkedIn here in Dublin. So European headquarters is here. 4,000 people in the office in here, and there's 1.4 billion people in the world on LinkedIn, which is pretty amazing. And here's the interesting statistic: less than 1% post anything. So we now have to have this online identity and an offline identity, and it offers opportunities, but also puts pressure.
Yeah.
Can I say something about extrovert and introvert labels? Because it's like, my experience is I call myself an interaction designer. So I kind of like working with psychological safety and how to actually do it, how to make a group safe. Not just making agreements about safety, but actually that people can feel safe in a group. And it can be done quite quickly. A group of strangers can be safe in my hands in like 1 hour. So it doesn't take like months or weeks or days even. The thing is that my experience in 30 years has been that the people who call themselves or are labeled introverts or extroverts start to behave differently in a safe group. The introverts start to speak, and the extroverts dare to shut up and listen for once.
Extroverts shut up? Really?
Yeah, because that's actually a survival mechanism for social stress. Because it's like, if you speak like blah, 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 and enjoy it, then you prevent other people from saying, something that undermines your statement.
Right. Yeah.
So in a way, it's a social strategy to survive the stress of it.
Yeah.
Part of it, at least. But anyway, so I think psychological safety, or the quality of interaction, how do we interact with each other's online or offline, is more valid than, labeling people that they are, you're an introvert, you're an extrovert, or ambivert.
Sure. Yeah. Agree with that. The other element I'm just wondering is I'm a big fan of the role of luck in our lives, and serendipity and chance. Those things have huge impact in our lives. So how does technology interact with those things? But put it this way, luck and chance don't happen lying in bed or sitting at your desk. They happen when you're out and about, when you're doing stuff, when you put your talents on display, when you talk to strangers, when you seek out unlike-minded people. So when you carry out all these kind of social activities. So this is where I think, AI can be a great tool, because it can help you get to and find people that perhaps you may have some interest in. But then that's as far as it goes. Then it comes down to you and your personality, your character. And there are all these sort of soft things, soft, squishy kind of things you can't measure, which become really important. I mean, we call them soft skills, or transversal skills, we sometimes call them.
Yeah.
But
they are. And it always drives me a little crazy when I hear people saying soft skills, because they're actually that implies that they're not important somehow. And yet they're probably the most important skills that we have or don't have.
Yeah.
And they're transferable. I have a friend that calls them transferable skills rather than soft skills. Because if you learn to communicate and have a difficult conversation, it doesn't matter what situation you're in, what kind of company or organization you work for, you can have that conversation. You know how to have that conversation. But it's really hard to learn how to have those kinds of conversations. people
I,
say.
I have kids in their 20s now, and they'd be pretty anti-AI, because the bottom rungs of the career ladder are being pulled away and
Yes.
replaced by more efficient, effective automation and et cetera. So, and I don't know if you saw Eric Schmidt, the founder of Google, gave his graduation address to students a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And when he started talking about AI, and the entire audience started booing him. So it'd be very interesting to see, is there going to be a pushback from that generation who have been, not that active since Vietnam in terms of street protests, etc.
Yeah.
But I think I sense something out there at the moment.
Yeah, there's definitely pushback against, like you say, the students that are just in university now, and the bottom rung on the ladder being pulled up. And I did hear about that speech and the booing. So lots of booing going on lately, it seems, for AI and other things. But but there's pushback against the data centers and the resources that they're taking up. A lot of I hear about a lot of that in the US and Canada. The water and things that their electricity that they're taking up. I don't know I don't hear, and I think it's probably just because I'm not in Europe. Is there talk about the data center issue in Europe as well?
For sure.
Yeah.
It uses so much water,
Yeah.
electricity. And I mean, the sheer statistics for the amount of the national output of these areas which are going to go into data centers is massive. So I think the other issue is the people behind, the leaders behind these AI companies, quite a strange breed. They got some pretty wacky ideas about the world, but they're incredibly powerful now.
Well, and it comes back to something we were talking about, at least from my perspective, comes back at least in part to something we were talking about a few minutes ago, and that relationship and that social health, that ability to see the greater good and understand the greater good and the impact. So, we have these people that have billions of dollars. They could solve world hunger in the blink of an eye if they decided to liberate the cash from their bank accounts, and even on they've become so isolated in their competitiveness and wealth, this urge, I would suggest, to fill some kind of hole in their psyche with cash and not recognize it, the impact.
I'm speaking in Scotland next week for a thing called Global Scot, the network of Scots from all around the world. They're having a big conference over there. And I'm going to talk about Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie was a Scottish businessman who left Scotland impoverished as an 11-year-old and went to the US, and Carnegie Steel became a massive company, and he decided to give it all away. And he built libraries, and he built museums, and he built Carnegie Hall, and he built universities. I mean, we need some of that amongst the current crop, who genuinely think they can do something serious. So I do a lot of work with USAID, or I used to. It's gone. Yeah. And literally millions of people will die as a result. Yeah. And when the richest person in the world basically decides we shouldn't be helping the poorest people in the world, I think we have a moral dilemma there.
Yeah, we definitely do. So, and yet there seem to be a lot of people that support.
There's nobody out walking in the streets protesting,
No.
So
no.
Anyway.
So, yeah, I don't know. There is pushback. I'm curious to see if it has any impact or not. YouTube, I read this morning something about YouTube had removed 16 channels that had millions of subscribers and billions of views because they were AI generated slop, and they weren't adding any value. So they apparently had identified at least 100 accounts that was a problem with. So
but what is that telling us then? Is it telling us that AI slop is not good, or is it could we have taken some learning in the sense of how to how to engage people on the right topic, and the topic was wrong, or what do we think about that?
Interesting question. Yes.
I
In
think,
the end, I mean, it takes a bit of time to build up that community, right? And let's pretend, I gotta say that, let's pretend that was a thoroughly built network and community and so on, right? What would we take that down as well? I mean, I don't know, like a CEO or president or whatever in our companies, right? In a big corporation, is it like just disappear because I don't know what? Because he's working with AI? I think there's a thin line. I mean, we definitely there is some AI slop out there, right? But and some pure AI slop channels. But where's the line going between fully AI generated content and content generated with the support of AI in the process, right? I think that's an interesting topic. Are you out, right? And I did look at a little bit at the algorithms and LinkedIn and so on, right? And apparently there's some mechanisms on AI generated content or AI supported content generated with AI support that's getting less impressions and so on, right? And I do feel like we need to look at that, right? Because I mean, let's look at the everyday work, right? Again, getting back to the business world, right, and what AI can support us with here, right? If I have a couple bullet points in mind and I can ask Copilot to draft that email, give the email the tone or the notion that it should have, am I angry, am I not, right, and so on, and build upon that, build the email back on that, and I, as a human, do double check the content, right? I mean, I wouldn't see no harm with that, right? Honestly, I haven't lived in the times where executives had their assistants who wrote their letters and they just signed them, right? I mean, what's the big difference here, right? I mean, yes, it was another human, but I mean, is that big of a difference? I think there's interesting things going on here.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, I think
I think the whole topic of blaming. I mean, if it's pure AI slop and just spam, if you would, that's what you would call it a couple of years ago, right? If it's only spam, then I mean, yeah, maybe best to take it out. But how did they get to those millions of subscribers, right? And where do you draw the line between spam and
slop?
Yeah, things done with the right tools or appropriate temporary tools, let's say, right? I mean, 10 years ago or 30 years ago, we didn't send emails, we sent letters and fax, right? Now we're sending emails. In 10 years, maybe in 5 years, we send our agents instead of sending emails. Okay, but that's the tone of the time, let's say, right? Those are the technologies we use at that point, right? And as soon as you use that responsibly, and that's, I think, what we need to figure out and what needs to be checked.
Yeah.
So, I think we should be fine. I mean, why not?
If YouTube had to ban AI creators to protect human ones, what does that tell us about whether our organizations are actually creating conditions where human work is irreplaceable? Is an AI response to that?
But would you say, Simo, that if AI is replacing a lot of the kind of, if you like, drudgery, a lot of the lower level work, let's say 20% of that work goes to, would you not think that allows these organizations to focus more on the higher value,
in an ideal world, yes.
Yeah.
But in the end, what we shouldn't forget about, right? I mean, I as you might see, I have plenty plants in my apartment, right? But I haven't found the tree where senior leaders are growing on, right? So I think in the end, I think there's also, I mean, one thing is the social health topic. The other thing is that we still need to educate our people, right? We still need to onboard them. We still need to build experience because, again, it doesn't live on trees, right? I have plenty strange trees, but I haven't seen 10 years of experience growing on them, right? So I think that's maybe another work model, right? Where we could do what we did call traineeship or so 10 years ago, right? A traineeship between a human and an AI. So they go in pairs and they do co-creative learning and so on, right? And they grow together. They have additional capacity, right? So I don't know, half an FTE of human skills and 1 FTE on AI. So you have 1.5 FTE in one person. Great. So then you can bridge the time between that human person has built that experience, right? And you could properly onboard him, right, or her. But again, what I see here is really, I mean,
maybe
people are expecting people who are 15 years old and have 20 years of work experience. I mean, for me, that doesn't really work, right?
Maybe AI can onboard people.
Yeah, it can, but again, it needs some direction, right? I mean, there's some great coming from the knowledge point of view. I think there's some great use cases for that, right? And I do interfere with the thought of second brains and digital twins and so on quite a bit these days, right? I'm not the biggest fan. You gotta be mindful of the scope, right? But if it's really about an offboarding and an onboarding experience and really moving on or passing on the most crucial part of knowledge, I mean, that's maybe a totally valid use case for AI, right? As long as you build the bridge and as long as you keep the human aspects in there.
Well, I think if those lower level jobs go, where are the middle level people going to come from?
Yeah.
In other words, like you have people who do quite basic sort of stuff as get into this profession, whatever profession they choose, and that leads on to the middle level, and then leads on to leadership and higher level. So, so I think if we have a mass of unemployed kids in their 20s, you know, they're only going to get angry and do stuff.
Yeah, but again, what's there for our successors, right? What's there for the coming generations? Is it like waiting, I don't know, maturing by talking to AI, and then suddenly I'm employed for a VP or a CEO level job? I'm not sure if that's how it's going to work, right?
Yeah.
Not to talk about spending your day in a mindful way, right? Or in a thoughtful and in a productive way.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And there are less and less young people being born in the world, in the Western countries at least.
Yeah, in Western countries at least. So,
well, what do you think of the articles which appeared in the last few weeks saying that these companies are now hiring philosophy graduates over computer graduates? Basically on the basis, I mean, I remember hearing an interview with the head of in BP, British Petroleum, and he was asked, why do you hire classics graduates from Oxford and Cambridge? And he said,
happened earlier.
Yeah, he said, because classics graduates from Oxford and Cambridge sell more oil, which I thought was a really thoughtful kind of answer. In other words, if somebody is good enough, smart enough to be able to do Greek and Latin in Oxford and Cambridge, they're going to be pretty good at whatever they turn their hand at. So this notion that the humanities as third level university courses will not disappear because they're kind of non-practical or functional in some way. Actually, I think it was quite a healthy response. I think that there was this kind of pushback, and that philosophy graduates were actually being hired at a higher rate than computer graduates.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I can imagine that they're more valuable in the workforce just because they're more well-rounded, you know, and less specialized. I was thinking, while you were talking, like, there are 4 young adults in 22, 23, 24, 25 range that immediately come to my mind that I know, and 3 out of the 4 of them are either going into jobs, apprenticeship programs, or one is through a program that is a yoga teacher, instructor, like that's what she's going to do, at least for the foreseeable future. No interest in finishing university. 2 of them finished university, 2 of them didn't. But they, you know, are not. They don't want to continue on with university, do a master's degree or do a PhD, which seems to be what's required now. They want to get out and be self-sufficient, and so an apprenticeship or, you know, something that's not requiring great amounts of higher education is appealing to them. They don't want to be 30 years old and still living at home or struggling to get by. Not that in Canada they'll be able to buy a house anyway because of the housing prices here, but, you know, certainly be able to get out and live independently. So, you know, that's yeah. It's interesting to see the shift, because I don't know that would have happened 30 odd years ago when I was graduating high school. That was everybody went to university or college. So, I think there's a shift there towards more programs.
I'm not sure the university model will continue to exist at the same level because it's so expensive. Certainly in North America, it's very, very expensive. And after 4 years, then you're paying that off for decades, and then you want to go and do a postgrad on 70 or 80,000, and maybe AI will be a way of producing equivalent sort of outputs in terms of student ability without spending 4 years doing it.
Well, jobs really don't, and I read this somewhere earlier this year, I think it came from Superbloom, a book that I read, that most jobs really don't require higher education. They could be done with a high school education. That the society, the competition has sort of pushed people towards this higher education. But this is why you get people being bored and disengaged at work, is because their jobs really don't require education.
Huge intellect. Yeah, that's probably a fair point.
We are running out of time soon, but I would love to hear like a short round of everyone of a final thought. Well, for now, not the final, but semi-final thought of how could we thrive with AI.
I think Kingsley, I'm going to steal your other people metaphor here, right? I think we can work drastically well with AI as our companion, as long as we are mindful of the other people, however they might be defined for a very concrete context.
I think we can create super minds, which is a combination of AI and the kind of, if you like, the human intellect. And I think the human have to retain the ultimate rubber stamp and retain that control. But I think there's this potential that both of those two dynamics together are going to be really formidable and can really begin to tackle some of the huge issues the world's facing, which we neither can do on their own. But with that supermind between AI and the human, I think that's the opportunity.
Yeah,
I would love to see a world where we would harness AI to help us to be more human towards each other.
Yeah.
I think you leave the AI to analyze the data and and we as humans do the judgment and the relationship building and nurturing and mental health. So,
when I was a young kid, I asked my mother, "What do you think I should be when I grow up?" And she said, "Be kind." I thought it was a really simple piece of advice. Be kind. And I think kindness is a really important thing. Mike Ryan is a guy who's head of with WHO, the World Health Organization out of Switzerland. And he said the most important single thing in life now is kindness, and we can all express it and do it. And every day we can be kind and outreach to people and reach out and all that kind of stuff. It's not rocket science.
Could we end with this? With the kindness thing, because I think that's a beautiful thing to end with.
Yeah.
What do you say, Stephanie?
Yep, sounds like a good idea. So thank you for joining us.
Thank
And
you so much.
We'll look forward to seeing you again sometime. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.